So, how are you, all my Dhamma friends? Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed One, the Perfect One, the Supremely Enlightened One. The Buddha was staying at Anathapindika monastery in Jeta Grove near Savatthi. Now the king Pasenadi, the monarch of Mahakosala, approached the Buddha, followed by a large number of youthful fishermen carrying a small boat filled with water. And a large fish in it. The fish had a striking look. It was completely golden, but when it opened its mouth, the entire Jetavana was absolutely filled with foul smell. Inside the boat full of water, it was opening its mouth every now and then, letting off filthy smell. After the king and the large group of fishermen bowed down before the Lord and sat on one side, the king said, "Lord, these young fishermen approached me with this strangely beautiful fish, which lets off disgusting smell. They probably approached me expecting a big reward for such an extraordinary extraordinary catch. I was struck by the beauty of the fish, yet it has such a foul smelling mouth. I wondered what kinds of karma has resulted in such an uncommon character found in Achiravati river flowing along the village ground. Since I am very curious, I have come to the Lord along with these people and the fish in that tiny boat. Lord, what is the karmic background of this fish? The Buddha replied, shall I make him speak for himself, describing his karmic background? Oh, it would be marvelous, Lord, said the king, and the large number of people who had gathered on that open preaching grounds of Jetavana now become extremely curious, expecting something spectacular to happen. The Buddha now asks the fish, are you Kapila? Yes, Lord, I am Kapila, said the fish. Now from where are you reborn? From Abisi Mahaniraya, Lord, the hell world. Abisi, where is your elder brother Sagato now? He has attained Nibbana, Lord. Where is your mother Sadini? She is reborn in the Mahaniraya hell. Where is your younger sister Tapana? She too is reborn in the Mahaniraya hell. Now where will you go from here? I will go back to my old Abisi Mahaniraya, Lord. The exhibiting outer despair, he just jumped up and then fell back inside the boat and died due to the impacts. Seeing this, the vast audience that had been growing in number suddenly felt a religious sense of urgency, meaning, and emotional upcharge born of an insight into the predicaments of life as revealed by these incidents. Now the Buddha relating the story of Kapila said, in the times of my predecessor, the Buddha Kaccapa, this being was among Kapila by name, together with his elder brother Sagato. He used to hear the Dhamma discourse of the Lord Kaccapa Buddha. Soon inspired by the Dhamma discourses, but the brothers becomes monks in the holy order of Lord Kaccapa. The narration continued as here under. It seems Sagato asked the teacher, Venerable Sir, how many Dhamma pursuits dura? Meaning the path of spiritual developments are therefore among there are two distinct paths, said the teacher. One is the path of meditation, but samatha, generating tranquility, and vipassana, generating insight into reality, and the other is the path of study, practice, and realizations of Dhamma. Sagato thought, I am now all enough to take to the path of meditation in seclusions, and went into a forest retreat to ardently pursue the path of meditations. He succeeded that in becoming an arahat, he was highly regarded for his noble qualities by once and all. The Buddha Kaccapa himself commended him of or his accomplishments. Now the younger brother Kapila thought, I am still young enough to take to the pursuit of study and practice a longer road for the realization of Nibbana, while Vipassana Dura being the short road to the attainment of Nibbana. So very sincerely and with great enthusiasm he pursued the path of mastering the Tipitaka. After some years, he becomes a very well-known master of the uh, scripture and gathered around him a large flocks of monastic pupils. Along with his growing him fame to spread as a great teacher. Now he began to attract lay followers and there with lots of gains and prestige. All these gains, prestige, fame, etc. brought in him intellectual conceit and arrogance. He seriously began to think that he indeed was a great authority of the Tipitaka, containing the authentic teachings of the Buddha. This intellectual pride made him very controversial and he begins to lose his popularity. Often he challenged, even looked down upon the erudite, uh, erudite scholars and their interpretations of the Dhamma. He becomes extremely opinionated and interpreted the teaching according to his own whims, openly contradicting the authentic teachings. Then he established a branch of Buddhism of his own, giving it a pompous name, which was rejected by the Mahajanga, carrying a huge burden of intellectual knowledge without ever practicing, much less realizing what he taught. At the end of his lifetime, all his gains vanished. Then his pupils discarded him, and dying a miserable man, he was reborn in the abyssal hells, the most frightening of all hell worlds. There he spent an immensely long period, several great aeons, that spanned between the erasings of two Buddhas, Lord Kaccapa and Lord Gautama. With the advance of our present Lord Gautama, he had a short reprieve from his unmitigated suffering, abyss, and he was reborn as the fish Kapila in the Asiravati river Sabati. Later, he was caught by youthful fishermen and was taken to the kings, who in turn looked the fishermen and the fish to the Buddha. The first life account of the fish Kapila, i.e., from the monk Kapila to the fish Kapila, was so moving that all those who were present became emotionally overwhelmed. overwhelmed. They clearly understood the predicaments of worldly existence, all of them struck by Sambhega thought. Here is a learned monk, after having mastered the Tipitaka, had completely gone astray by his own accomplishment. They saw throughout the predicaments of life how everything ends. Life can be misused and thereby bring misery rather than happiness. Insight into the inherent predicaments of human life brought about a religious sense of urgency. Sambhega, uh, thus the chonar, one outgrows the worldly bondage, the bitter it is. For everything in life, whether good or bad, can put one in bondage and block one's progress on the spiritual path leading to deliverance from bondage. At these critical points of intense emotional upsurge among the listeners, the Buddha now broke into an inspiring utterance by way of four verses intended to rouse everyone to put forth unrelenting effort and reach the goals of a spiritual life. These four verses are found in Dhammapada as well as in Kapila Sutta, in Sutta Nipata. They are follows: one given to heedless living. His craving grows like a creeper, even as a forest monkey seeks fruits. He lives from life to life, tasting the fruit of his karma. Whoever is overcome by this uh, writes wretched and sticky craving, his sorrows grow like grass after the rains. But whoever overcomes this wretched, wretched cravings, uh, so difficult to overcome, sorrow fall away from him like water from a lotus leaf. Good luck to all assembled here. So I say to you, dig up the road of cravings like one searching for fragrance. Virana grass road. Let not Mara repeatedly crush you as the path crushes needs. At the end of the discourse, the 500 youthful fishermen were so profoundly moved that they fe- fe- fell at the feet of the Buddha right there and sought to be ordained as monks into the holy order established by the Lord. The Buddha bestowed on them but the lower and higher ordinations with the special ordination procedure known as Ehi Bhikkhu. As soon as the Buddha uttered the formula, "Come, monks, let the holy life make an end of sufferings," all of them forthwith were transformed into radiant young bhikkhus endowed with all the 8 monastic requisites. This chant itself was so moving that the vast crowd in one voice shouted, "Waterfall! Indeed, O Lord, marvelous! Indeed, O Lord, Sadhu, Sadhu!" These young monks receive instructions in meditations. They put forth great effort, assiduously practicing Dhamma in Dhamma in a secluded retreat, and all of them entered the stream leading to Nibbana. They became areas centipede change, and later on all of them became arahat, perfect ones, enlightened disciples of the supremely enlightened Buddha. The moral of the story of Kapila is indeed especially edifying. The first one is the futility of merely learning without practice of the Dhamma. Because intellectual knowledge does not achieve equalization of the 5 essential faculties, merely knowing is not enough. What one knows must be converted into a component of life itself. When intellectual knowledge is combined with humility and rational faith in the supremacy of good over evils, then this knowledge turns into wisdom, and it is through wisdom alone that one can gain liberation from the bondage of worldly existence, samsara. The five spiritual faculties have been explained in detail already, so a brief account should be enough. The five faculties are wisdom, faith, faith, saddha, energetic self-effort, virya, uh, relentless mindfulness, sati, single-minded concentration, samadhi, insight into reality or intuitive insight, panna. All these faculties have their own specific qualities. They are distinct, but when they are mutually and appropriately synthesis, i.e. harmoniously combined, then they becomes powerful spiritual force bala that transform the consciousness from the mandance to the supermandance. A consciousness which is subject to greed, hatred, and delusions after its transformation is no longer subject to these negative factors which constitute the root cause of involvement in samsara. When saddha, faith, is combined with intuitive wisdom, then this combination can work wonders. It can destroy all forms of blind faith, mental fixations, and bigotry on one's hand, and dry intellectualism, doubt, and cynicism on the other. The monks Kapila had enough of learning, but he had no faith in the spiritual efficacy of what he learned and taught. The result was he became arrogant, intellectually dishonest, and that was the end of his career. Like with vigorous effort, he combined it with calmness of mind or single-mindedness brings about equally dramatic result. The tensions due to overactive involvements and the fragile qualities of mind due to excessive use of energy can immediately reduce, if not done away with, by inducing tranquility and stillness of mind, want of meditative concentration, mental calmness, while fully engaged in a given text. Is the hallmark of efficiency and is when this combination is cultivated and well practiced, life can change from a state of immaturity, inexperience, and lethargy into a state of measured experience, energetics, and purposeful existence. The fifth faculty of mindfulness is the moderator, regulating all bodily, verbal, and mental action into a moral and spiritual activity that transforms life. Unless a person trains the mind to be attentive, alert, and awake all the time, throughout the cultivation of mindfulness, one can never achieve real fulfillment in any branch of knowledge and disciplines. Three world realms: Kama Loka, sensual world where living beings experience sensual pleasures, animals, humans, and Deva Loka. Rupa Loka finds materials world where Brahmas gains pleasure through the refined form of their bodies in the Brahma realms where form exists. Arupa Loka, immaterials world, formless Brahma realms where Brahmas are free from physical burdens. Five aggregates: Panchakanda. Life consists of four mental faculties, Nama, and the four elements, Rupa. Rupa, matter consisting of four elements. Solidity, fluidity, heat, motions, Vedana, sensation or feeling. Channa, perceptions or identifications. Sankara, mental formation or mental tendencies. Vyayana, consciousness, mental energy combined with the preceding three mental faculties and six sense objects. In order to understand the world beyond, one has to discern the four elements which are its constituents. Nature of elements. The four elements are Patavi, Apo, Tejo, and Vayu. These elements are not exactly earth, water, fire, and air as often translated by basic energies. Patavi is the elements of extensions, the substratum of matters. Without it, objects cannot occupy a space. The qualities or hardness of hardness and softness, which are purely relative to conditions of these particular elements. Apo is the elements of cohesion. Unlike Patabi, it is in tangible. It is this element that makes scattered particles of matter coalesce and gives rise to the idea of body. When some bodies are melted, these elements becomes more prominent in the resulting fluid. The elements of extensions and cohesions are so closely interrelated that when cohesion ceases, extension disappears. Teju is the element of heat. Cold is also a form of Teju, but heat and cold are included in Teju because they possess the power of maturing bodies. Teju, in other words, is the vitalizing energy. Preservation and decay are also due to these elements. Unlike the other three essentials of matters, these elements has the power to regi- regenerate matter by itself. Bio, the elements of motions, inseparably connected with heat is bio. The elements of motion movements are caused by these elements. Motion is regarded as the force or the generator of heat. Motions and heat in the materials realms corresponds respectively to consciousness and karma in the mental sphere. These four elements coexist and are inseparables, but one may preponderate over another, as for instance, Patabi in earth, Apo in water, Tejo in fire, and Bio in air. Win the ultimate freedom from the world. Behold this manifold world by ignorance. Epictet come into being and touch with what has become delighted, yet from becoming not really realized. Yeah, all becomings wherever and in whatsoever state they be, all are impermanence and dukkha and doomed to change. In one who sees as it really is by perfect wisdom, the craving to become is left, no craves he for non-becomings, but cravings outer ending, outer stopping in nibbana. Thus become cold that monk no more reborn, no more becomes beaten is Mara. He owns the fight, escape it all more becomings the eye of truth. Now, when this sermon, Dhammacakka, had been spoken, there arose in the venerable Kondana the pure and stainless eye to see the Dhamma truth, to wit whatsoever is of a nature to exist is like which of a nature to chase the wheels of existence, just as a stick thrown up into the air sometimes falls on it, but sometimes on its sides and sometimes on its tips. Similarly, because do beings obstructed by ignorance and fettered by cravings migrate and go to the round of birth, at one time going from this world to another world, and at another time coming from another world to this world. What is the reason? Unimaginable, because is a beginning to the rounds of birth and death for beings obstructed by ignorance and fettered by craving, migrating and going the rounds of birth. Starting point is not evidence. Thus, for long time, because have you experienced suffering, pains, and destructions, and the cemeteries have grown long enough for you to have become dispassionate towards all conditioned things, long enough for you to have become detached and released from them. Niddikunda Suttam, a person stores away a treasure under the ground or water, thinking whence needs reach it will be useful to me. A treasure is stored away by a person to meet this circumstance, namely when one is accused by the king, governments, or when one's security is threatened by blackmailers and robbers, or when one has to redeem oneself from debts, or when one has to face calamities like famines, etc., or when misfortune. Befalls and threatens one's life. Only for such emergency situations do people resort to storing away a treasure under the ground or near water, etc. Thought this hidden treasure is so well stored away as under the ground or water, etc., yet not all such measures can suffice to charge or guarantee one's safety for all times. For instance, the treasure may disappear or be displaced from its place, or the owner may lose the memory of the mark of the spot under which the treasure lies, or the Nagas, celestial beings, may spirit it away, or the Yakas, the demoniac beings, may simply carry it off, or yet his heirs may become hostile, and in his absence seek it up and carry away, or yet when his merit is exhausted, all this hidden treasure may then utterly be lost. But when one gives generously and practices the moral precepts and applies self-restraint and gains mastery over his minds, only then these real treasures are well stored up but for women and men. Against the merits one gains by building a shrine, a temple, or by making offerings or rendering service to the holy order, or by generously charging worthy individuals or one's guests, or by lovingly looking after one's father, mother, and elders, brother, etc. It is through these acts that one's stories up well the real treasure of merit. Indeed, this merit treasure alone are impregnable, for no one can take them away from one, and when one dies, this treasure alone one carries with oneself. Indeed, all the tangible worldly things are left behind, and one departs only with these real possessions of merit. A chair, if this real treasure none can ever climb, nor robbers can ever steal, so let the wish accumulate a special merit which alone is the real treasure and which accompanies him when he dies. The real treasure alone brings forth all the wishes of both divines and human beings. Indeed, whatever they do, they share all that they gain only through their special merits. Whether it is the beauty of complexions or the sweetness of one's voice, or against the beauty of one's figures and other features, or power of authority and of flowings. Indeed, all these are gained that only through one's merits, whether it is the rulership of a state, or indeed the sovereignty of the entire land, or the happiness and pleasures of a universal monarch, or the sovereignty in divine realms. All these are gained only through one's merit. Whatever wealth and treasure there be in humans born, whatever bliss and delight there be in the heavenly realms, whatever transcendental attainments there be, indeed all these are gained only through one's spiritual merit. whatever precise, precise, whatever precise mastery, mastery supernormal powers, transcendental, transcendental knowledge which a person can gain through association with friends and through one's own energetic effort. All these are gained only through one's own spiritual merit. The higher analytical wisdom and freedom of mind which one gains through the fulfillment of three types of spiritual perfections, spiritual perfections, namely that of the enlightened disciples, arahat, that of the hermit, enlightened one, Pasika, Buddha, and that of the supremely enlightened Buddha. All these supermundane and superhuman attainments are gained only through one's spiritual merit. Because the possession of spiritual merit is the real bone in life. Therefore, those who are wise and discerning, they ever extols the accumulation of spiritual merit. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, all my Dhamma friends. Please subscribe my YouTube channel. Thank you. Babatu sabba mangalang rakantu sabba devata sabba buddhanu vavina sadasoti bhavantu te. Babatu sabba mangalang rakantu sabba devata sabba dhammanu vavina sadasoti bhavantu te. Babatu sabba mangalang rakantu sabba devata sabba sanghanu vavina sadasoti bhavantu te. Itina sacha vajina sotiti hotu sabada. Itina sacha vajina sabaduka sabba bayu. Sabaruga sabba antorayo sabba upadava dunimitang binachantu. Itina sacha vajina hotu te jaya mangolanti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Sabbe satta sugita hantu babatu sabang ya